Welcome back to OCR Challenge of German Nationalism. I'm just going to recap what we considered last week. We considered what the situation was for Germany and for German nationalists in 1789. So the first big thing is that there is no nation-state of Germany in 1789. There is no independent German state, in other words. We also established that German nationalists were those who were pushing for the creation of a German nation state, a Germany which is united into one political entity which is independent from any other state. And then 3, we said how the French Revolution was largely responsible for the development of German nationalism. And we'll explore that a bit later on. So we know what the German nationalists want to do. They want to push for the creation of a German nation state. But there are problems facing them, and those problems, those barriers, are barriers of division within Germany, or what was considered to be Germany at the time, because obviously there is no independent Germany. So first, different states controlled its territories. There are 100 plus, hundreds of states, different German states. There are religious divisions. The southern states were Catholic and the northern states were Protestant. And finally, the German people were spread across a quite large territory, which made it hard to decide who should be in Germany, which territory should be part of the German state. We'll think about each of these 3 then in more depth. So first of all, let's think about the different states. We say different states controlled its territories. There's about 315 different states in Germany at the time of what was considered to be Germany. And there was this overarching body, this organization really, which controlled or had some influence at least in those states. And this was the Holy Roman Empire. And so if you want to talk about a Germany existing at the time, the only form in which it really exists is the form of the Holy Roman Empire. And as we say, this is the main governing body of Germany in 1789 and had been for a very long time, for almost 1,000 years. And the Holy Roman Empire is something which is very confusing to understand. And you can see this red line that runs around the different states on the map is the borders of this Holy Roman Empire. You've probably heard of the Nazis' description of their empire as being the Third Reich, which means the Third Empire. Well, this is the first empire. This is the first German empire that the Nazis would call it, with the second being the Kaiser's empire. So you've got the First Reich, the Holy Roman Empire, you've got the Second Reich being the Kaiser's Germany, and you've got the Third Reich being Nazi Germany. So this was one which lasted a very long time, lasted 1,000 years. But by the point that we're talking, by 1789, it's really become a shadow of its former self. And Voltaire has this famous quote. He says, "It's in no way holy, nor Roman, nor an empire." It's not holy anymore because the Pope doesn't have any involvement in it. He did at first, so that doesn't mean anything. It's not Roman. You can see on the map there's no territory that it controls in Italy, really, maybe just a tiny bit, but virtually none, and it's certainly not in Rome or have anything to do with Rome, nor an empire. The power of the Holy Roman Empire to actually control anything was very limited. It didn't have much power. So it wasn't an empire in the sense you imagine an empire being, which is this sort of central authority which has control over all these various territories. It didn't have much control. So initially a powerful force, meant to be a kind of emulation of the Roman Empire. I think of it as being maybe a fan fiction of the Roman Empire. But by this point, it is nothing like that. It's now become much smaller, as you can see from the map in purple below. Its boundaries were very large and now they're very small. So it's this loose collection of states. And it's very much now like the European Union. The European Union being this sort of not particularly powerful body. On paper it would look very impressive, but the states within the European Union are very sovereign. They have a lot of control. And this is the case with the Holy Roman Empire. These states had much more power than the central organization. You'll note as well, and I've made this point already, that it has now existed for almost 1,000 years by 1789. And it's interesting that Hitler and the Nazis would talk about the Third Reich being this 1,000-year Reich. That was the plan. And that, again, was to kind of emulate, to refer back to this First Reich, the 1,000 years of the Holy Roman Empire. So that's just an interesting link there to another point. As we said, 314 separate states within the Holy Roman Empire. Each state had its own ruling class. It had its own laws. It had its own traditions. That's a problem. That's going to make it very hard to control. It's also very bad for trade if you've got sort of boundaries and you've got different laws and customs in all these different states. So Germany's very much backwards economically because of this, because of these different states. And that's one of the things that German nationalists hate about the division of Germany, because it's leading to all Germany being very backwards economically, when other states which are more united, like France and Britain, are really pushing forwards economically. It also had an imperial parliament, which technically could call upon an army, but in reality it had become powerless. So the Holy Roman Empire has these technical powers in place, but it can't really use them. It is really weak. Now, it's an empire, and it has an emperor as well. But these emperors have become increasingly irrelevant. Increasingly, being the Holy Roman Empire is just really a way to show off. It's not really any actual power. It doesn't mean real power. And the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire have for a very long time been Austrian in nature. They've all been Austrian leaders, Habsburg leaders. And the Habsburg royal family are the big power, really, then, in Germany, in a sense. Obviously, the emperors don't have a great deal of control, but this influence and the power of Austria very much does extend through Germany. If you had to pick at this point the power, the biggest German state, who is the most powerful, you would say Austria. You'd say Austria is the big power, or at least the Habsburg Empire is the big power at this point in time. If anyone was going to unite Germany, it would be them. If anyone's going to be the power in Germany, it would be them. So we have this Holy Roman Empire, and the Holy Roman Empire is actually causing Germany really not to be united, because it's just terribly organized. There's 314 states in it. They're all separated. And so the Holy Roman Empire, if anything, is holding back Germany from progressing. It's not really something which is allowing Germany to be united. Okay, next point. So religious divisions. As I've said, this is a key point. Now we might not think it's very important. Now we would think, well, all it affects is what you're doing on a Sunday. Back then, religion is linked so strongly to politics, so you can't divide it. You can't take away religion and politics. Religion is really important at this point. Now we'll just skip over Charlemagne, but we know how, hopefully, a little bit of the background of why Christianity in particular became so powerful in Europe, with sort of the Roman Empire transferring from pagan to a kind of Christian identity, and that would lead to a whole change in Europe to being a Christian sort of center. But it's in Germany where this sort of unity that has existed in the West, in Western Christianity, comes to an end. There is the Reformation, there is the battle between Catholics and Protestants with the Reformation. And the Reformation begins where? Which part of the world? Which part of Europe? It begins in Germany, or I guess the Holy Roman Empire in that sense, because again, there is no actual German state at this point. But that's where it starts, and it starts with Martin Luther, who is a German. And the German states, the different states, the 300 plus states of Germany at this time, are all fighting against each other. Some of them are Catholic, some of them are Protestant, and it leads to this absolutely horrific war, which is the religious wars, which go on for a very, very long time. And these sort of 30 years war goes on until 1648 with the Peace of Westphalia. And that peace said, stop fighting about religion, stop fighting about Catholic and Protestant. If one state decides to be Catholic, if the ruler of one state decides to be Catholic, it's Catholic, and that's it. If a ruler of another state decides to be Protestant, it's Protestant, and that's it. And you just have to agree on that. And so that's how it ended. And a lot of people say the Peace of Westphalia sort of leads to the idea of national sovereignty. And we've already thought about how the French Revolution leads to that. But this is also a stepping stone towards national sovereignty, because it's all about sort of each independent state deciding its own future and its own destiny. Now, you can end a war, but obviously after a war, you're going to have tensions still. And there were very bitter tensions between the Protestants, mainly in northern Germany, who had dominated there, and the Catholics, mainly in southern Germany, who had dominated there, centralizing in sort of Austria being the powerful Catholic state of the south, and Prussia being, later on, the more powerful Protestant state in the north. And it's like the American Civil War. You can end the war, but then there's going to be resentment. There's going to be difference for a really long time. So the Americans in the South keep flying the Confederate flag for a really long time afterwards, even until very recently, and having this identity against the North because of the Civil War. Well, it's the same thing with the German religious wars, the 30 Years' War. They continue to have these resentments, and that would make it very difficult to unite Germany into one state. You've then got the spread of the German people, the third point, which makes it very difficult to define Germany's boundaries, who is in Germany. And it's also causing problems for a lot of the states that have German speakers, because they are going to be worried about German nationalism. Let's say, for example, Switzerland, that there's a lot of German speakers there. Suddenly, people want to break off. People want parts of Switzerland, although Switzerland isn't sort of yet in its full incarnation. But let's say that happens and they want to split off and go into Germany. That's going to be a problem for the people in power in that part of the world. Or if we say the same for Austria, we say the same for anywhere else in the world, France, it's going to be a problem for those countries, because parts of their territory are going to be annexed into Germany. So who should be in Germany? Should it be all German speakers? Should it be a limited percentage of German speakers? It makes it very difficult. And in addition to that, you've got people who don't speak German. You've got non-Germans who are in Germany itself. So there's all these problems going on for Germany in terms of where are the Germans. So the barriers to German unification, the barriers and problems affecting German nationalists. There's no common religion. There is no common united political system. There's the Holy Roman Empire, but if anything, that's causing more division because it's so weak, and there's 314 states in it. And there's also the fact that there is no obvious natural frontier to the east or the south of Germany. There is the Rhine in the west, there's the sea in the north, but there's not necessarily an obvious frontier to the south or to the east. So these are all things which are really causing problems for German nationalists in 1789, which they'll have to surmount to go forwards. Now, next, we'll look at the different nations or the different states that are in Europe in 1789, and we'll consider how they are affecting the process of the unification of Germany, if they're going to be an aid to it or if they're going to be a step in the way to it. Thank you for listening.